Lens distortion can happen in some portrait photos, and you can fix this in Photoshop, and it's one of those techniques that needs to be somewhat subtle. So go ahead and open up wideangle1.jpg and wideangle2.jpg from the support files. I'm going to duplicate the layer so we work on a new layer so we can see the before and afterwards. Press Ctrl J on the PC or Command J on the Mac. I took this photo with a super wide angle lens. A lot of photographers like to use between 80, 85, up to 100 millimeter lens for portraits. You don't want to use telephoto lenses or wide angle lenses for portraits because it's going to compress or bloat out the portrait subject. I took this on purpose with a wide angle just in case you take a portrait with that kind of lens, or if you have that kind of effect because the distance from the subject to the camera causes this kind of bloated look. It's a very subtle look. You can see the landscape behind him. It's very obviously taken with a wide angle lens, but the subject then is distorted just very slightly. So this is a slight adjustment to fix that. So with wide angle 2 open, go ahead and go to filter and then lens correction. And instead of auto correction, let's just go to custom. And where it says remove distortion, we don't want to go to the left because that'll make it worse. Bloat it out even more like a fisheye lens. We want to go to the right, and you don't want to go so much that it overdoes it. And you can see the background, the building starts to curve, and we don't want it that much. But we want it something, and you want to see the before and after. You can click preview. There's before, and there's after. So it is fixing a bit. That's at plus 36. If you think that's too much, you can even bring it over to the left a little bit. We can click on grid to see a grid here. That's more for landscape for the most part. I mean, we could use it in portrait, but it's helpful here to use the remove distortion because it removes that kind of fisheye look, that very subtle wide angle look with too low of a number lens. So if you have a 10 millimeter, 15 millimeter, even 35 millimeter, it can cause a little bit of distortion. So if you're not using between 80, 85 millimeter and 100 millimeter lens, if you're using above that, it can distort it where we would need to pull that to the left. If we use below that range, more of a wide angle lens, then we need to bring this to the right. Here's the before, and then here's after. So he's not just kind of bloated out. It's very subtle in the after. So another example, this is more close up. Let's press Ctrl J or Command J. And let's go to filter, lens correction, custom, and then over to the right a little bit. All right, here's before, there's after. So it is fixing that distortion in his face that's happening because we're using a wide angle lens. Very low number millimeter lens on the focus there. So there's before, there's after. So very subtle effect. It's a little bit exaggerated in this because I took it with a wide angle lens to show the distortion, but even if you're using a lens that's not that wide of an angle, if it's below that range, it might cause, depending on how close the person is to you, when you're taking the photo, it might cause some distortion as well. So again, that's filter, lens correction. I'm going to go ahead and delete that top layer, so we'll press Ctrl J again. You can also go to filter, camera raw filter, and from there, where it says lens corrections, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over the tab right there. If you hover over it, it should say lens corrections. And here's the same thing. So distortion, if you go to the left, it'll make it worse. Go to the right, it'll bring it in, something like that. Or you can just press A up under upright. Make sure you got manual selected. And it might do a good job, it might not. So I would just say no to that automatic one and just fix it ourselves. All right. Then, of course, it's going to have, if I hit the icon here, see some empty pixels here. So we'll need to use the crop tool, and you could crop it out like that. So with this one, same thing. If we go, I'm going to delete this top layer here. I'm going to press Control J again, and we're going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Click that 6-1 over, Lens Correction, click on Manual. If I hit A here, that does an okay job, but all it does is kind of rotate it. So I'm going to go to this distortion here and just pull it back just a little bit. You know, you can do it too much, but just something like that. Then okay. And we're just going to crop out something like that. So there's before and there's after. Much better photo afterwards. Not as much distortion. It's still a pretty wide angle shot, but the subject isn't distorted from the lens.